change is a law of life.
I used to loathe Slack. I thought it was horrible. I never fully understood it. Like, I didn't. And then I had my friend Jean, who was like, no, you're being stupid. I think what people value the most is just kind of being included in the conversation, from the get-go. Instead of kind of being lumped, people want to feel included and they want to feel like they're kind of being heard.
Yeah, it's true.
I also feel like change doesn't happen just because you introduce something new, right?
Anyone can build a lot of things. Like some kid in his basement can build a multi-million-pound business, and himself.
Right. So in order for me to make that change physically, make that jump, I had to make that change mentally. Right. And then
So last episode we spoke about, suppose in the pilot, like how shared values create conforming or functional communities, and trying to, I suppose, bring a positive connotation or to the word conformity. And now I think what we want to do is extend that to change management and software. But really, like, if we talk about those communities, like being a group of people, a business, a whatever, how do those communities adapt to change? And then how do you balance, I suppose, the conformity with like the idea of change resistance, evolution, new things, stuff like that. Is kind of what I think we should chat about.
my favorite quote. Sorry, Manu.
Go.
I had a quote by, I think it was John F. Kennedy. It said, "Change is a law of life." Sounds hectic, but that actually got me thinking. Like what you just mentioned now, that connection between change management and conformity, right? And in order for you to conform, you have to not conform. I mean, conform. You have to change your way of thinking, or you can just conform to someone else's way of thinking. I guess I don't know, but in order for you to change, in order for you to conform, sorry, you have to change your way of thinking, right? So when I read that quote by John F. Kennedy, "Change is a way of life," it made me wonder, right? If subconsciously we live our whole life conforming to someone else's belief, or to our own, or to a predefined belief. Everything my opinion at least, everything about whatever it might be, whatever subject matter expert you might be an expert in, or whatever, you learned somewhere, right? And then you had to either come into agreement and agree with it, or with that person, or go against it, right? So basically what I'm trying to say is, technically, if you think about it, right? Change is like what John F. Kennedy said, is a way of life. But technically, we are conforming every day to something or to someone. That's how I see it, at least.
Regardless of whether you accept the change or not, right? What are you saying?
Exactly. Regardless.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I think for me, if I look at like the issue, like in our space, like in software specifically, I think change management is this is not a new thing. We're just saying things that I think a lot of people already know. But like change management is the either first or second biggest predictor of whether a piece of software, especially if it's enterprise grade, or especially if it's kind of like core to how the business operates or facilitates a core business process, whatever it may be. So like, I suppose what I'm trying to say is like, what kind of value does is the software being brought in to solve? And if that value is really, really high and the change management isn't executed very well, it's like the number one or two biggest predictor of success on when that thing's going to fit. Because if you've been working on Excel or Google Sheet or whatever it has been, maybe for the last 4 years, or you've been using another piece of crappy software and now you're trying to find something better and you find it, but people are so used to the way things used to be that there's so much like new is not necessarily better, because it takes a lot of bandwidth to figure out like, how do I do this and how do I make it part of my workflow? And almost just like in your brain, like we've switched from Slack to ClickUp for our chat, right? And for like the first 2 days, I kept going back to Slack. Like I would open my Slack instinctively, like
We'll do that.
There's no one to talk to here. Then go back to my Slack. Let me go back to ClickUp. But now I think, and what I always found, I don't know what you guys thought, like I always find it really, really hard to manage my day-to-day work in one particular app. Like I've tried to use Notion, then I tried to use Notes, and I was jumping between the two. And then I was using my like Slack, my own Slack channel to create tasks. So I was using those three, and then I ditched Notion, and then I can't use my Notes app. And then I was using just Slack, and it's taking such a long time. And I think the chat thing kind of nailed it for us. Like now ClickUp is like, I don't open any other app to sort my tasks out. But I still like, man, like the value realization of like ClickUp is so much more now.
Yeah.
But that if they just had some sort of like onboarding thing, like we're not a big company. I'm sure they do for bigger companies, but like if there was just some sort of on the thing in the software that if you signed up, we all got taken through like a mandatory process of like, right, this is how you're going to use this app. And now you can feel capable. And this is why this should work that way. And how you should set all these things up. I think you would adopt it a lot faster. So yeah, in a long way, I suppose the point is like now ClickUp is high value for us, but in another organization, like let's just pay where you're paying a annual license fee and you're on a 5-year contract.
Yeah.
It takes 12, 16 months to bring your entire team on board to, do this, like use the software the way it's meant to be used. Like, man, it's just like, you just see it happen so often where it's like, that's not, the change management's so poor. And then people are like sitting around looking at the thing like, oh, the software's crap. Like, no one's used it.
I mean, sorry.
Oh, sorry, T.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
But I mean, what they say with change management, it's not necessarily about the software, it's the people. That is the biggest thing. Like when it comes to change, nobody really likes to change because you're kind of giving, and that's not to say that people will automatically resist change, but you're essentially pulling them away from something that they've gotten used to, that they feel comfortable with, that they've like navigated through it.
Yeah.
So they are your biggest thing, and they're the biggest. They're going to be the biggest adopters of it. They're going to be the ones that will praise it, complain about it, or pull their hair out. And if they don't really have a massive awareness around it, and they haven't kind of been, and your people don't have full oversight into why we're doing this, and kind of being spoken to, then the impact of that, I think, on any team, department, company is you're not going to get stuff done as potentially as efficiently and definitely as quickly. I mean, at least for us, like the ClickUp thing. Initially, I used to loathe Slack. I thought it was horrible. I never fully understood it. Like I didn't. And then I had my friend Jean, who was like, "No, you're being stupid." He's like, Slack is amazing. And I'm like, I hate the thing. Like, because we were Google chats and I'm like, oh, it's so great. Like, it's just, and then getting onto Slack, I was like, okay, like, I kind of like this. It actually looks quite nice. Like, it's cool, not bad. There's fun things. I mean, that one day when I discovered that you could add canvases to channels was like so profound for me. Loved creating a document with emojis. And then we shifted over to ClickUp. But I mean, lucky for us, we're, the benefit of not having multiple people It was easy enough just to say, okay, let's try it. Like you said, let's try it. Let's see.
Yeah.
But funny enough, so I use the Slack app, desktop app, only for chat. Only for chat. So I've got the desktop app, but I only use it for the chat, just so that I don't miss anything. And then I like to open tickets and like comments and stuff like in my web browser. It's weird, but that's how I do it. And that's fine. That works for me. But like the desktop app is just chat.
You know,
Only.
you would know what change management, right? You reminded me. Remember when we switched from Google Chats to Antigua? This is just before. Well, this was last. I don't know, before you joined, right? We were using Google Chats for like a year and a half or a year, and our change management to transition from chats to Slack was literally one morning. I was like, I greeted everyone on like our general chat,
Yeah.
and I had no response. So I was the first thing that popped into my head was I was like, okay, it's not a bank holiday. No, everyone always responds to me. I'm like, if there's got to be a prank going on, so I just left it. And I was like, I bet you someone's playing a prank. So I just left it, right? And then hour and a half later, I get an invite to Slack,
Oh, I remember that.
and I was like, so I go invite to Slack, and I was like, okay, this is what's going on. So I scroll through, and I just see all the chats are like, I think we should invite him now. No, wait a bit longer. What? That was it. And then it was like, all right, guys, we're not using Slack anymore. And then we're not using Google Docs anymore. And everyone just on Slack the next day, and we were like, okay. I was like, okay, fine. It's kind of like, just change it. Like, just do it if you can. If there's no massive constraint to it, like, just do it anyway. And it was quite funny. But things what you were saying about you're talking about the human aspect of it. I wrote something down, and that was like, change management fails when it's about systems, and ignores the human need
Yeah.
or shared purpose. And then there was something else about like good change management is creating a bridge between what we value today and how we'll express those values tomorrow, right? And I think it's almost that like, how do the people perceive the change? And do they see the change as aligned to the values of the business? I.e., we want to improve the way we communicate. We want to communicate more efficiently. We want our communication to actually not just be something that's convenient. I mean, convenience obviously is key, but like, want to communicate more with more intent, more efficiently. We want that communication to inform our work, our day-to-day work better. We want to keep track of things better. You Slack. And then you almost have now that Slack changes to ClickUp. And I watched a video that Lloyd sent me just before we moved to ClickUp, and it was a good opinion. It was basically like, the thing that ClickUp provides over Slack is that your work and your communication is oriented the right way, where the communication informs the work of like, we're talking about something in work, right? And that piece of whatever knowledge can now become a task, can now fit into a list or inform a document, whatever it is. We're not taking it from Slack or putting it in a canvas and then putting that canvas into ClickUp and whatever. It's just like, it's all in one place now, and it works quite intelligently alongside itself. And I think almost that idea of like how you perceive the human side of like, we're going to go and change something now. It's like, how does this actually fit into the greater thing of what you're trying to do as a business? And then how can we communicate to everyone, like, right, this is how it's going to make things better. Does everyone agree? Kind of.
Yeah.
Like, and or are we kind of neglecting or ignoring some of our company values by bringing this in? So I think it's an interesting.
It is interesting how we moved to ClickUp, because you know what's also everything. Do you know what's also all in one place? Safe Workplace. So
Sign up now.
that's the whole thing. It's just like, so it's interesting, like how we're building something where everything is in one place. And now we're using something to make sure that, well, we want to keep everything all in one place. So but yeah, I mean, I think maybe in certain aspects, people they overthink change management. They kind of overthink it a lot, just like and obviously you want to bring in your values and kind of emphasize that. But I think what people value the most is just kind of being included in the conversation, from the get-go, instead of being lumped with something, whether it be a policy, whether it be a piece of software, I'm sure I've heard from, you know, people, other friends sort of in bigger corporates and stuff like that, where they kind of just getting like, oh, here's a policy. Can you just sign it quick? So even something like that, when it's having a discussion around it, and it doesn't need to be obviously in a massive boardroom company wide, but, kind of having those smaller discussions within teams, because sometimes trying to include everybody when you're a 5,000 person strong organization is very difficult.
Yeah. That's
It's just that small task of getting people involved, I think is really important. People want to feel included, and they want to feel like they're kind of being heard,
Yeah, that's true.
I also feel like change doesn't happen just because you introduce something new, right? For example, back to ClickUp and Slack. For the longest time, today still, I literally log on to Slack. Plus, Slack is set to open automatically as soon as I put on my Mac. So it's the first thing I see. And I get the shock of my life and I don't see a text from Manu. I'm like, what's happening? And I go, oh, ClickUp, there's a text. Right. So it's like we introduced something new, right? But then it wasn't easy for me personally to adapt to it. And now in the context of the conversation, right? When it comes to businesses, but particularly businesses making a change, whether it's in systems or whatever it might be. But I also feel like as a business that needs change, chances are you need change. You need to change whatever it might be. Policy, software, tool, it, and chances are your team knows it too. Right? Whether or not you make the decision to actually change, it depends on a bunch of factors. And it brings me to it was this policy that I came across. Is it a policy? I don't know. It's what's his name? Kurt Lewin. Kurt Lewin. Right? It's called a force field analysis. Right? And the concept is, excuse me, every change effort is a balance between, I think it's a driving forces and the restraining forces. Right? So for every change that you want to make, there's also a restraining factor. Something is holding you back, whether it's fear, whether it's someone else, whether it's whatever it might be. But my point is, organizations know they need change, right? When it comes to, again, software providers, for example, ClickUp. I'm actually keen to know why, like, what led you to the decision. Obviously, I'm shifting to a different conversation. I'm going to brand positioning now, but I'll be keen to know because why a brand would switch from whatever platform to a different one. It also depends on how that brand that they want to switch to what's the word, portrays themselves, right? In the sense that software providers also need to make it easier for the buyers themselves to transition from different software. Like you said, Manu, that it would have been helpful if ClickUp had a whole onboarding process, etc. And
saying
but
that
that's
they
just my
might do, maybe we did not actually use it. So if anyone sees us, there's no hate. We just didn't see anything.
And you're also the type of team to kind of figure things out.
Yeah.
I think we do.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would have.
We,
Yeah.
I'm going to live with you. I've skipped every single, like, if a tip comes up,
Yeah, same here.
I'm like,
I click it, skip it.
I don't respectfully, thank you so much for taking the time to type out the tutorial. No, I will read the instructions when I'm struggling. Basically, that's just what it is. I'd rather, like, let's see it in front of me and then figure it out.
I saw that.
And I
Reminds me of this this video, this reel I saw. It was someone like working with ADHD or something, and it's like listening to instructions, and it's like this guy, and the instruction says like, okay, now take your piece of paper and take your scissors, and where the outline is, and he starts cutting, And there's like,
Yes,
look,
that is so good. Literally, and it's like, and then put your scissors down, and help.
That's very
Yeah,
much me with those
yeah.
tutorials. I'll read like the first sentence and I close it, and then I'll try and do what I thought I can, and then I'll realize I have no idea what I'm doing because I've not read the damn thing. But Tika, what you're saying with the ClickUp thing is we'd used ClickUp before. We hadn't used, it's like we tried Jira and a couple of others. ClickUp in terms of its interface and the way I think it just allowed you to work a lot more, I say, intelligently without being like, if you look at your dashboard, it's like, can I see what's important to me? And, or is this just like absolute like UI overload? Like, I don't know where to look. I'm overwhelmed on like, and then I just stopped using it. And I feel like that other platforms kind of went in that direction. Except ClickUp kind of kept things a bit like they nest everything pretty well inside everything, you know, all the cool stuff. Like, and so that design element, it was very, very key in terms of, and just like, it's just really, really easy to use. It's kind of, it went through a weird patch where like they changed some stuff, or was it last year? And I was like, I hate this. Like, why is everything a lot different? But they kind of went a bit long, played it a bit long, and then suddenly they added other things to that. And I was like, okay, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
But like, if we think about like some of the people, like tying the context in, it's like, you think about some of the clients that we've onboarded, right? I think you would, something I got from what you were saying, it was like, it kind of has to be like the pre-change, or change management really starts like before the software is adopted.
Yeah, true.
Or whatever you're trying to do. Like, we're going to be changing this from that. It is going to be changed in 12 months. In order for us to get there, one, we want everyone's feedback. Like, this is talking about your thing of like the driving force versus the restraining force. The driving force is the person that wants to change, or the department, or whatever it is that's initiating it. The restraining forces are going to be everyone that does not agree with it, or everyone that's like, but we used Excel for the last 10 years. Why do we need to change? We know how it works. Like, it's not perfect, but blah, blah. And then it always needs to be like this effort of like, not when the software is implemented, now we want to change people's habits, or 8 weeks before Haley is a piece of training of how you're going to go and change the thing that you've been doing for 5 years. It's like all the way through. We signed, like, you've agreed what supplier you're going to join. Now there's going to be an onboarding process, but your work has started 6 months, like way before that. So that by the time it goes live, especially if it's like an enterprise use software, you're not waiting for people to like catch on or go, oh, but what about Excel, or what about it? It's like, it's changed. Everyone's using it, but all understand, we've ironed out kind of where the issues are. We've ironed out, you know, we know for a fact that if it's a big organization, not everyone's going to agree with us on, or see the value straight away. You know, some people are going to be like, this is great. Other people will be like, this is stupid. But that's just naturally society's fine as that push and shove. But I think kind of like pre-work makes such a huge difference. And you don't end up in situations where like I was saying with like some big clients that we onboard, is like 12 months later or 10 months in or whatever it may be, people are looking at the scene going, there's no adoption. We haven't done it. Now, yes, that comes through the support of the provider itself, of like, how well can you support your client through the transition? But obviously that's a lot easier said than done too, because bigger companies kind of want to take control of the things themselves, right? It's not like, oh, you coming in to like tell our employees how to do this. Like, we have a team to do this. Sorry, that was a rant, but that's versus.
No, that's fair though. I do have a bone to pick with the concept of change management. Because one of the things that they say that as part of the kind of blueprint or strategy or whatever is for, it actually makes me cringe. Like how some people don't like the word moist. I don't like how change management, I don't like how change management's like allocate change champions.
Oh
Yeah.
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 I can't.
It-
It makes my skin crawl because it's not, I get it. You want to identify individuals in the finance department, this department, or whatever. I'm thinking like on a
Yeah.
bigger organizational kind of space. But I don't, I think, no, I think it shouldn't be down to a group of sort of individuals to kind of like pioneer it and maybe listen in on the feedback and, the change champion. I find it's so cheesy and no,
I agree.
I disagree with the concept of change champions. I think it's really, like you said, Mono, the company, sure, and the sort of the software partner that they're bringing on, collaborating in that sense and ensuring that it's kind of like across the board.
Yeah.
Not just
Yeah.
kind of random people listening in.
It brings another dimension almost to like your service offering. And I think I heard must have been Chris Walker talking about this. How adding a layer of professional services to your offering, but not just, hey, this is an onboarding cost. It's like, we're going to guide you through this for the next 12 months, right? And you're going to pay us an annual fee for these professional services, and you're going to get, and in these professional services there'll be training on the software, there'll be change management, there'll be all these different things. And then after a year of doing this, you'll be able to use this piece of software confidently by yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can almost mark down this piece of software. It moves the advantage away from kind of the technology and more towards the people and where the expertise really is. It's like, because now, like, tech isn't as big of a competitive moat as it was 5 years ago, right? Because anyone can build a lot of things. Like some kid in his basement can build a multi-million-pound business,
Yeah.
and himself. And then, my point is, and so it then moves a competitive advantage more towards like, how well do you actually understand your client and the real challenges that they go through in using things like your product or software, whatever it may be, and how well can you actually work with them to solve for those things operationally. I have trouble getting buy-in from my legal team or my sales team or my whatever. All right, cool. Let's talk to them about how do they work? What are the things? Because they might work very, very differently to you. So how do we get them to opt in? And then you can develop strategies and plans and things around to solve those things through professional services, and then bringing that into your, I suppose, your package or whatever it may be. I think, like, in my mind, if you solve that piece of the onboarding process or the buying process, especially for like big pieces of software in a business, and you can kind of, I don't know, you got to get the buyer to opt into it too, though. You know what I mean? It's got to be like, yeah, you're going to help us do this, and we'll give you some control, and we'll give you access to employees, and we'll give you and that it can be a little bit gated, but just so that you can help them drive the change rather than them trying to like hold on to this thing and they're like sinking. It's like, no, people will use it eventually. It's like, no, they're not using it. Let me help you. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think
No, it's true. And I feel like obviously change is scary, right? But in the context of this conversation, but I would assume wasting time, like, I don't know, 20 hours a week on sifting through spreadsheet, right? That's scary too, right? But just like what you said, man, I like how you said you need to gradually onboard the customer, the client, right? You need to know what they're struggling with, or what they might fear in terms of change management, in terms of the whole process itself, and guiding them through it. And I feel like where a lot of software vendors get it wrong, that I've come across personally, is or their messaging rather, makes it seem like, hey, change now, like just down, without giving people context of how big of a change this is going to be, but at the same time, also highlighting the benefits of the change, right? Change itself is already scary, right? But the result or the outcome could be the motivating factor. For example, obviously, just go with me here. I'm going somewhere. But before I switched to marketing, I was a developer. I literally went to university to study software development, etc. But I started my own marketing agency in like my first year, right? So long story short, um, I got a job as a developer while I was in my last year, and then that same year of me being a developer, my agency just blew up. I started getting clients, etc. I had a mentor who sat me down and then said, you have to choose a direction. Where do you want to go? Right? Are you going to stay as a developer or are you going to be a marketer? You have to make a change now. Right? So in order for me to make that change physically, make that jump, I had to make that change mentally. Right? And then that mental prep came from my mentor. He guided me, highlighted what I need with my career objectives, my career goals, etc., and the outcomes of the potential change if I make it to marketing. Long story short, here I am. My point is, right, timing also plays a very crucial factor. At the time, I didn't have that much time. And the stat I read that said 71% of business leaders said that they've regretted making a change, a business decision, too slowly, right? With a third, which is 35%, saying that their hesitation caused a negative impact on operational activity and productivity. Right. So when it comes to change itself, it's scary, don't get me wrong, I understand. But at the same time, I feel like software vendors need to do a very good job at like what you said, Manu, portraying or making it as seamless as possible and also highlighting the benefits of making the change. Right. Because like I said, people know they need change. The fact your system is broken, it's messed up, but you stay with it because it's what you know.
Yeah.
I might as well just stay here. I know this. But then if someone were to come and dangle a carrot in front of your face and show you what this could save for you in terms of time, efficiency, staff burnout, then chances are you'd be more likely to switch. At the end of the day, if your systems, excuse me, if your systems are not just costing you, but your employees, your team, if they're frustrated, you already lose it. So, might as well not change.
It would be interesting to kind of get more dive more into those. That's the 71% of business leaders who regretted making the change because it was too slow. So I think there definitely is you've got to kind of strike the balance, but it is also important to definitely assess like where, even if you're not doing it company wide,
Yeah.
which I mean, I can assume from what we've seen in some instances, I mean, we have rolled out our, um, our platform company wide, but most of the time people do take a phased approach. So I think it is definitely about the same thing on how we will alter our sort of how to assist each client
Yeah.
when it comes to management. I think the same comes to organizations, is understanding, okay, where you are at that time, understanding like the general appetite for change, what's happening, what are the challenges. And that's not like a sudden thing that that you're going to do over a 3-month period.
Yeah.
This kind of thing happens continuously. I mean, it's a continuous thing. Whether that happens in performance reviews, assessing across the board how the organization performed that year, and so it would be very, very interesting to kind of get more details like on that and really dive into it for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And another point, sorry, Mono, because TK, you mentioned some people are inundated and they use spreadsheets, and that's how they collect their data. You'd also be pleasantly surprised at when people get so used to something and so used to having 5 million tabs open and kind of sifting through ample spreadsheets, how used to they get to that and how they develop their own system and how that they're actually fine with it. I mean, fair, they don't know anything else, but they're in their little spreadsheet bubble. This makes them happy. They've finally grasped onto how to make things in their world better. So to get them to change is scary. My biggest thing for change is breaking my routine. Quick story, my therapist has given me 6 months to move in with my boyfriend that I've been together for a year. I dragged that man to couples therapy, not because we have issues, but because I'm insane and I'm very systematic. So I'm like, okay. Then I start overthinking. I was like, I must now change my routine. And, bless that man. He's wonderful and is super easy to live with. I'm a nightmare because I'm petrified to break my routine like that. And then it feeds into like lack of control, blah, blah, blah. That's the therapist say. But that's my thing. So when you're speaking about the spreadsheets, I can relate in the sense of, especially once you've grasped something.
But I feel like, yeah, I'm sorry, Martin, but I feel like, obviously, like you said, you should get used to the system in place. It's what you put in place and whatnot. But obviously, in the context of business, what about making it easier for the next person? Right? Like you have your system, sure, don't get me wrong. But now you get a subordinate, you get TK comes along, Now you have to take more time teaching TK how to do what you do the way you do it, when there could be a faster way, an easier way, a more simplified way. Right? Obviously, don't get me wrong. I get people have processes, people have stuff they're comfortable with, which is all good. But what about, like, basically my question is, should you consider the next person or just do you for the sake of doing you?
I'm not sure. I think it comes back to that thing we were talking about of like, is one of our values that we will always try to do things better, faster, in a smarter way.
Yeah.
And we say yes. And then we say, okay, cool. And does that mean in instances where you've been doing one thing for 12 months a certain way, someone else comes in and goes, hey, how about this? And you go, no, we've been doing it this way, right? And it's like, and that person is able to provide a very good reason as to, no, well, this is one of our values. And well, I think you can improve all these areas, these things that we do in these ways.
Yeah.
Like, let's try it out. And then if at that point you're still saying no, then I think that's like a cultural issue, right? That's like you're just completely ignoring your values. And so you see, it's like every company should be agile, right? Well, like if you're going to succeed, you have to be agile, you have to work at speed, right? Those are say values, right? Work values. Everyone conforms to those values. And then it's like, but how those values are implemented or upheld or whatever it may be is going to be through things like, we're going to have to change when things aren't working, or we're going to have to change each other's ideas, and we're going to have to do, upset each other maybe, and not agree sometimes. But you can't, if the thing ties into the value, I suppose, like you can't really, I don't know, it kind of eliminates the subjectivity of like decision making to a large degree, but maybe not completely. And I think that way you then make it, and maybe that's an interesting thing, is like maybe part of, I don't know this, but like maybe part of a change management document, and this probably is the case if I've thought of it, like someone's definitely, is like change is only introduced on these circumstances, right? And these are the company values. And if the thing that is being changed does not uphold our values, hey, I don't agree with that. And here's why.
Yeah.
And we have the right to challenge it and address it and kind of give our opinion to the thing of like someone suggesting safe workplace. And it's like, I think safe workplace can help us do all these things. And someone else goes, well, not really, because we work these ways and these are our values. And so if we do it what you're suggesting, we're going to be neglecting all these other things. And then it was like, well, actually, good point then. Maybe we're a bad op. Yeah, it is interesting because I suppose it can work in so many different ways. It's like new employee or and then because it's like that new employee brings something on board and then they run with that for 12 months and then someone else comes and challenges their idea or their app, but then suddenly they're having to, bring that behavior that they pushed against themselves. So I suppose
Yeah.
there are some interesting behaviors in there, maybe.
I heard a quote by Clinton that said, "The price of doing the same thing is far higher than the price of change." Yeah, the price of doing the same thing is far higher than the price of change. It is a bit controversial because that's not always the case, but that's a whole different conversation. But I feel like where a lot of software vendors get it wrong is they sell more than they support, right? In the sense that I've seen it firsthand. A company I worked for before, I wouldn't say its name for legal reasons, obviously. But a company I worked for before, in my career. So they were a software company. They sold software, and one of the biggest positioning statements was, "We will onboard you, we'll support you, etc." It was all words, but when it actually happened, when it came to actually doing it, supporting the customer, onboarding them, it wasn't the easy software to implement or to just, it isn't a plug and play, basically. It isn't a, yeah, you get it and you're done. It requires extensive training, customer support, etc., which they sold, but never actually did well. Obviously, I was more of a marketer. I never got to see the behind the scenes, but from what I saw for a time and the churn rate itself, they had an extremely high churn rate monthly, right? And I feel like where a lot of software vendors get it wrong is they sell more than they support. And I feel like software vendors need to not just sell, but support, right? And the wording you use is so crucial. Obviously, I'm speaking from a marketing perspective as I'm a marketer, but implementation and onboarding it isn't a handover. It isn't like, yeah, here you go. It's a partnership, right? You make it clear that you're partnering with this client to help them get the best out of your solution. And like you said, Manu, back to what you mentioned, with that convo you watched from Chris Walker, I think. Chris Walker, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, my point is, software vendors need to make it extremely easy for the customers they own, and treat them, I don't want to say like children, but yeah, but change is extremely scary. I just became a father, right? And obviously it's a personal thing and it's a huge adjustment, right? I plan my day out and it's like, what the heck, but then you have to quickly realize what needs to change. And again, in your routine, I hate having my routine messed up things. When I first moved in with my wife, it was a huge adjustment. It was a huge adjustment. I'm the neat freak. She's the one that's, yeah. So it was a huge, I was like, oh, why are you swapping floor? It was, oh man, it's our first year was insane. But yeah, sorry, I'm going.
Um, the you said the cost of implementing a change is
Cost of doing the
I think
same
it's
old thing is far higher than the price of change.
right.
Yeah,
There's I think Alex or Moses said it's like the cost of not the cost of between like let's just say you want to make I don't know let's just say you want to make $1 million a year, right? And you're making no money, right? The cost of not achieving your goal is $1 million a year. So it's
yeah.
like the deficit between where you are and where you're not. I think that. I hope I'm not butchering that. But it's something like that. And so an idea, I suppose, is like maybe part of that like change management thing is like almost measuring, and we do this sometimes, is like the success metrics, right? It's like what do you want to be able to say in 12 months, 24 months, whatever. But
Yeah.
then going a step further and go, instead of going, hey, we missed our goals this year or whatever it may be, it's like, no, we said we wanted to spend 50% less time managing these things, right? We did not achieve that. So actually, we've missed our goal by 50%, or we've missed our goal by whatever that volume or that metric is. And then going like, well, how are we going to fix that next year? It's like almost using it as more of like less of like in a very, very impactful or effective way, so that when you're doing that change management piece, is like, we're going to be doing these things and these are the outcomes we're hoping for. And then going, and if we don't achieve these things, there's going to be a cost to it. And the cost is going to be this thing that we set out to do.
Yeah.
And then kind of using that as our constructive criticism or feedback, really, to go like, how are we going to change this? Like, did we set a realistic goal? But being aware of that constant, not just the cost of buying the thing and not using the thing, it's the cost of you haven't achieved your goals, and how far was your goal from where you are, and it's all of that, and how can you know what I mean? And that becomes a lot more, I suppose, real to you if you position it that way. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the element of why you're doing the thing in the first place has to be driver behind the decision.
Yeah.
It almost is not just the software provider has to help you along. The software provider should help you interrogate the reason you're changing in the first place. Like, why are you changing? Oh, well, we've been using Excel and we thought we'd migrate to more like a digital platform and we da. Okay, let's rate the pain of using, like if you change them, and let's speak to some other people, and then almost like really interrogating, like, are these people changing because they want to, or because they really, really need to? And there's like a measurable thing of like, they want to improve all these things, improve these metrics, and they understand what they want to do. And now we can work with them to help them do it. Not, we're changing because we're sick of the old thing. Because again, like the new isn't better. Or no, sorry, yeah, new isn't better, old isn't bad. Another.
Yeah, and I feel like sorry, thanks for your part, the job to speak. But for me, I feel like the biggest takeaway is you don't need perfect, right? Well, that's my opinion. You don't need perfect, but you need progress, and you need trust organizationally. That's the word. Yeah, you need trust within the organization. And I mean, personally, when Manu said, let's switch to ClickUp, I'm easy. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Like, I'm very easy. Can tell me whatever. I'm like, yeah, type for Cliff, let's go. But how kidding? Don't doubt I would do that. But a lot of people aren't as receptive to change as we'd like them to be. And I feel like for me, the biggest takeaway from this conversation was you don't need it to be perfect. You just need progress. And organizationally, if what you're using or what you're doing is already making your team groan or resent waking up. I used to hate Teams, Microsoft Teams. I have PTSD to this day. That tone just
Still do. With all respect, Microsoft Teams, I think it's horrible. Don't even get me started. The aesthetic, it's awful. It's horrible.
Yes, man. Oh man, it's literally
I've
flipped.
to a sales demo, and it is like the prospect they set the meeting late because they can't. I mean, now you have to adapt to all the platforms, right? But if I'm see that I'm joining a Teams thing, I'm like mood immediately just drop off.
Same.
Same here.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
Teams,
It's awful.
you need better change management. Change something because
change something.
Yeah.
as
I don't know.
Google Meet people, even maybe Zoom is like okay, it's a bit fringe.
No, it seems so horrible. Like it's like the aesthetic, like I just the look of it, like it just.
But that's the other thing.
It's like too much performance. It doesn't. I feel like there's no like flow. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't know, like it does.
That's the other thing though would be interesting. Like with, let's say, like softwares like ClickUp and Slack and all that kind of thing. It's like the good thing about Google Meet is that there is not like a barrier to starting a meeting. It's just I click a link, I'm in the thing.
Link.
I'm here.
Great.
Click up and just click the video icon, you call someone. Slack, you just call someone, right? But obviously sharing that outside your organization. So if you could actually share a link, a meeting link, and it's actually in ClickUp and it just opens up a web browser for them. Just like log in, set a password, sign in with Google, bro.
Yeah.
Just, I want to be
Horrible.
click.
Microsoft asked me to reset my password one more time. I think I actually might lose it. Like it's
I hate Microsoft.
It's-
But
in Teams people, if you send them a Google Meet link, like paralyzed.
no, they
Oh,
are.
yeah.
It's true. See,
Right. But it's so easy.
It's all the security around it too. It's like, it's just anyway. So that's a good place to end off. I think we should do a round 2 of change. I think it's interesting.
It's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. There's a
Why?
lot to be said about it.
This will be interesting to get someone else's perspective.
Yeah.
Mm.